I never thought my own living room would feel like an interrogation room, but that morning, when the flashing red and blue lights bled through my curtains, I knew everything I had carefully built was about to detonate. And the cruelest part, it wasn't a stranger who lit the fuse, it was my family, the sound of heavy boots on the porch, sharp knocks, 3 times, the kind of knock you don't ignore, MS Raman, Department of Homeland Security. My heart plummeted. For a second I wondered if this was some twisted prank, but when I opened the door and saw the federal jackets, the tactical gear, and the black SUV swallowing the street, my blood turned to ice. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions about the contents of a file folder recently accessed from this address." The agent's voice was calm but clipped. He knew exactly what he was looking for. I didn't need to ask which folder. Basic work files. That was the name of the folder sitting innocently on my personal laptop. A folder that contained nothing basic at all, at least not for ordinary people. For me, it contained encrypted files tied to sensitive cybersecurity operations I managed through my government contract job. Files that in the wrong hands could burn countries. The problem, someone had opened it last night, and it wasn't me. 12 hours earlier, I was sitting at my kitchen counter, sipping cheap instant coffee, my mind drowning in the gray fog of another exhausting week. Work had been brutal, marriage was hanging by threads I no longer had the strength to hold, and my sister's family, who had moved in temporarily after their financial mess, was treating my home like a rent-free hotel. I loved them, I really did, but love and trust are 2 very different currencies. Why do you keep that ugly old laptop locked up like it's gold? My brother-in-law Adil had teased the night before. He was a smooth talker, the kind who could lie and make it sound like a compliment, because it is. I'd replied curtly, snapping my locker door shut. It wasn't arrogance, it was survival. That laptop was my entire professional life. I'd worked in cybersecurity long enough to know one wrong click could destroy everything. But in the back of my mind, something had been gnawing at me lately. Someone had been watching me too closely. The late-night login attempts, the way my Wi-Fi blinked irregularly, and Adil's curious eyes. When the agents entered, my living room transformed into a crime scene. Every movement they made was efficient, cold, rehearsed. My mother was sobbing in the corner, wrapped in a shawl. My sister Noor stood frozen, clutching her daughter like she'd been caught stealing. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, placing my laptop on the table. This device was used to access classified information through an unauthorized fingerprint login at 2:14 a.m. Were you aware? I shook my head slowly, my throat tightening. Adil cleared his throat. It was just a folder labeled Basic Work Files, he said weakly. I didn't know it was a you what. The words ripped through me before I could stop them. In that instant, something cracked inside me, not the kind of crack you can tape back together. The agents exchanged glances. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us for questioning. Your entire household may be subject to investigation." I watched as Noor's face crumpled. My mother whispered my name like a prayer. I'd spent a decade building an identity as a strong woman in a male-dominated field. I'd clawed my way out of broken relationships, betrayals, and endless judgment to get here. But none of that mattered now, because a man I let stay under my roof had turned my life into a ticking bomb. And he wasn't sorry. I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't scared for me. He was scared for himself. I took a deep breath, tasting the bitterness of betrayal on my tongue. The agent leaned in. MS Raman, who else had access to this device? I looked at Adil. At my sister, at the family I once trusted more than anyone. My voice came out like shards of glass. Apparently, I said everyone but me. And just as they began reading out the warrant, I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war? The first knock wasn't loud. It was firm, like the kind that doesn't ask to enter. It informs you it's already here. My aunt jumped, my brother froze, and Sana finally lost the smirk she'd been wearing like cheap perfume. "Who's that?" she whispered. I didn't answer. My body moved on autopilot, laptop under my arm, phone clenched in my hand. My mind replayed the alert again and again like a stuck record. Level 4, another knock. Harder, Layla Khan. A man's voice called out, deep, professional, no accent, no warmth. Department of Homeland Security. Opened the door. Aunt Roxana's face went pale. My brother's jaw dropped. What the hell, Layla? Sana backed away from the door like it might explode. I walked slowly toward it, each step heavy as lead. My pulse pounded in my ears, my throat dry as dust. When I opened the door, they were there, 4 of them. Dark suits, earpieces, ID badges hanging like weapons. Behind them, black SUV lined the curb like silent predators. "Ma'am," the lead agent said, "we need to talk." The living room filled with the smell of their presence, sterile, sharp, like freshly cleaned gunmetal. "May we come in?" he asked. I didn't have a choice. They moved with surgical precision. One agent walked straight to the router, another to the laptop. 2 more positioned themselves between my family and the door. "What is happening?" Aunt Roxana screamed. "We didn't do anything." The lead agent ignored her, his eyes fixed on me. "Miss Khan, our systems detected unauthorized access to restricted files through your company terminal. Do you confirm that access originated from this location?" "Yes." I breathed, but it wasn't then who. I turned to my family. They looked small now. My brother's bravado melted. Sana's sarcasm vanished. They didn't know what they were opening. I said, the words tasting like blood on my tongue. The agent's jaw tightened. "Ignorance doesn't clear liability, Miss Khan. You're responsible for any breach from your system." One agent held up my laptop, already secured in an evidence bag. "It's all here," he said. "Agent Collins," the lead said, "secure the network." Panic exploded in the room like a grenade. My aunt started crying. My brother tried to talk his way out of it. "Look, man, we didn't know. We thought it was just spreadsheets." The agent turned to him, voice flat. "Sir, do you realize those spreadsheets contain classified movement schedules?" My brother's mouth went dry. I clenched my fists. They didn't know. They never listened when I told them my work wasn't some little office job. I was the quiet one, the obedient one, the one they thought they could walk over. Now their ignorance was about to cost me everything. "Miss Khan," the agent said, pulling me from my thoughts, "you're coming with us for questioning." Sana gasped. No, she didn't do anything. But my eyes burned with something new, not fear, not just yet, something hotter, rage. They had opened something they shouldn't have, and now I was the one paying for it. The cold night air slapped me as they led me to the SUV. My wrists weren't cuffed, but the invisible weight of their authority felt heavier than any steel. My family stood on the porch, pale and shaking. As the door shut behind me, I caught one last glimpse of them. My family, my blood, my betrayers. The engine started, and I realized something. This wasn't the end. I spent the next 48 hours pacing my tiny room, calling every agent, landlord, anyone who could offer me a space I could afford. Every door closed on me, but I had a fire now, and fire doesn't beg. It burns paths. Alina stayed by my side. "Sara," she said one night, exhausted, "maybe you should just know." I interrupted. "I'm not giving this up." 2 days later, Shabnam Bibai returned, not as a customer, but as a friend. "I told my cousin about your shop," she said. "He has a small place near Liberty Market. You can rent it cheap." I didn't cry often anymore, but this time I did. We moved everything. My sewing machine, the cracked table, the rolls of fabricant, to the new space. It wasn't fancy, but it was brighter. Bigger, it smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings, and then came the turning point. One of Alina's friends, a social media influencer, posted pictures wearing one of my designs. Overnight, the page exploded. Messages, orders, collaborations. For the first time in my life, I was seen. Weeks later, I was standing behind a stall at a local fashion exhibition, my own name on the banner. "Nidan by Sara Raman." People stopped, admired, bought. My parents came too. I didn't know they would. They walked slowly through the crowd, their eyes scanning everything. For the first time, they didn't look disappointed. They looked stunned. My father approached me quietly. His hands trembled slightly. You did this?" "Yes." I said simply. Mama's eyes were wet. "Sara," she whispered, "I didn't need their apology anymore." I had already forgiven myself for ever needing it. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the shop. The neon sign flickered softly. My hands brushed the table that once held my pain, but now held my power. I picked up my phone and called them. "Papa," I said gently, "I won't come back home, but you're welcome to visit mine." The silence on the other end was heavy, but it wasn't cold anymore. When I hung up, I felt something I'd never felt before. Freedom, not from my parents, but from the weight of their expectations. Months passed, Nidon grew. I hired other women, single mothers, widows, girls who had been told they were burdens too. Together, we stitched dreams into fabric. One rainy night, exactly a year after that phone call, I stood again by my window, same rain, same darkness, but this time I wasn't broken, I was reborn, and in the distance my phone buzzed. Alina had sent a picture of Mama wearing one of my designs, smiling. I smiled too. The girl who once sat on the floor, shattered by a phone call, was now building an empire from the ground up, and this time, no one could hang up on me.